wasn't ready for a desk job. I wanted to go out and see the world. I wanted to experience something, do something that was very much on my own, and I wanted to figure out if there was a way. I'd obviously been very, very fortunate if there was a way that I could give back in some way. And when I kind of made that list out over and over and over again, people kind of said, well, this kind of seems like a Peace Corps idea. And ended up on a plane about 8 months later. And I remember extremely vividly, we left Logan and then we went to a staging down in Miami for a couple days. And I remember so clearly the wheels lifting off from Miami and then touching down in the Dominican Republic and going, oh my God, what have you done? And I spoke broken Spanish when I got there. I don't know a soul, never been to the country. And the only thing that I knew was that it was going to be different from what I expected. And it definitely was that. So I ended up, I think all of us would probably say, you end up doing a whole bunch of different things throughout the course of your Peace Corps career. It's extremely entrepreneurial. Part of your actual service is they tell you kind of what you're going to do, and then they're very open about the fact that for most volunteers, after you get to where you're supposed to go, part of your time is to figure out what you're actually going to do, just because they don't know. And there's a lot of freedom in that, and I think a lot of the strength of the organization is in that. So I ended up working with and living with a group of guys that were between the age of 18 and 30 years old, Dominican men, that were guides at this unbelievably beautiful series of waterfalls that form natural water slides and cliff jumps. It was about 45 minutes from a middle-class tourist destination. And when I arrived, there were about 50,000 tourists that were going there every year. But these guides would end up literally swimming across these holes, taking people on their backs, climbing up these rock walls, and doing this incredibly intensive physical labor. The tourist companies were charging people between $40, $50, up to $80 or $100, even $100 a person, and would only guarantee the guides roughly 10 or 12 cents per person. And yeah, it was terrible. But the area was a national park, although nobody knew it, and the environmental ministry was bankrupt, didn't have any money. So working with the guides, went around and raised some money from the UN and USAID, and then went back to the government and said, hey, you guys this is a beautiful resource, it's getting exploited. If you give us the management rights, we can probably clean it up a little bit. And he said, well, you guys don't have any money. And I went, well, if you give us the legal rights, we'll get the money. And they said, if we get the money, you give us the legal rights. So sign. And they did. So we ended up creating this contract that allowed the guides to manage this park. It gave them a per-person entrance fee. Part of it went to increase their own salaries. Part of it went to form a cooperative for healthcare and education and that kind of stuff. And part of it went to a environmental preservation fund, and then part of it went to a community fund where $1 for every tourist that went in there got directly invested in the community. So they bought a school bus and built a little police station, scholarship fund, basketball courts, put in potable water to a couple hundred homes, and they have that on a renewable basis every year. And it's still going, which I think is a pretty cool thing. In terms of your question about was I successful, I keep in touch with those guys about once a week now. I've gone back a couple times. It's still very much a big part of my life. I think probably the best thing that I would ever could do for them was one night, every now and again, we would have these cookouts down by the river. And I had snuck off to Puerto Plata, which was about hour or so by local transportation away, which is the next kind of the closest city. And it took me all day, but I was able to find a bag of marshmallows and chocolate bars and graham crackers. And the look on their face when I went around asking them there's this huge bonfire, and I asked them for a stick. And they went, what are you doing? This is a crazy white man trying to do. And I put this white thing on the end of it. I'd never seen a marshmallow. And I threw it in the fire. And they said I had just gone crazy. And then I took it out of the fire. It was flaming. And I threw some chocolate on it, put it between 2 graham crackers, and then took a bite out of it. And they thought I was absolutely nuts. And I've got pictures up on my wall of about 10 Dominican guys with marshmallows all over their face. And they thought it was the greatest thing I ever did in their lives. So s'mores might be the greatest thing that I've ever come up with.